DMT is dimethyltryptamine, and it's quite distinct from 5-MeO DMT, 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine. So let's talk about DMT first. So how DMT has been around forever. Specifically, it is the molecule in ayahuasca that produces the visions and the spiritual experience. In ayahuasca, there's also another plant which allows DMT to be orally active. The other plant is what also produces the nausea. So when you talk about ayahuasca, people will talk about purging, and people are always encouraged to take a bucket, and often they vomit a lot. That's not the DMT. That's the harmaline, which is in the other of the two plants that are combined. So in that context, DMT is orally active, often a very spiritual experience, quite disorienting to one's sense of self. And certainly if you take enough of it, your sense of self is completely obliterated. And it's been used in ceremonial contexts, largely centered in Peru. Now, curiously enough, people also smoke DMT, and smokable DMT is a somewhat different experience. It's very difficult to smoke, which is actually probably a good thing because it limits people's ability to smoke it. So it's a kind of a dose control mechanism. There's been, if you read the internet discussions on it, people talk about it being incredibly otherworldly and people going to other places. And it was Terence McKenna that talked about meeting in machine elves and having these other living beings in this other world. And so there is a lot of internet discussion around the otherworldliness of it. And my own belief is DMT itself, when it's smoked, isn't particularly therapeutic, because when people talk about what they experienced, it wasn't their own unconscious mind. It was often other things and other beings. And I don't really see therapy in that. So interestingly, 5-MeO DMT sounds similar. It isn't. It's completely different. It's again, a short act, smoked, so it's short acting. It's not as visual as DMT. It's more sort of universal-esque. I'm not sure if that means anything to people, but it's you go to a larger sense of yourself being in the universe. It can be intensely therapeutic. By that, I mean accessing unconscious material and then being able to bring them back. It's a bit of a hazard in the community when it's used recreationally, specifically because it's way easier to smoke than DMT, and essentially you can overdose on it. So the way the people that use it describe it is they talk about a handshake, a hug, and a full embrace. A handshake is usually about 2 or 3 milligrams. 5-6 milligrams is a hug, and a full embrace is 8 to 10 milligrams. It's easy to smoke more than that. In fact, it's easy to smoke a lot more than that. And I've certainly talked to people who are disoriented for weeks, experienced psychedelic users who are very distressed by essentially smoking too much of this stuff. So enormous caution needs to be exercised with 5-MeO DMT. At the end of the day, when all of these things become legalized, I believe it will be a useful therapeutic tool, because what you are experiencing is unconscious material, I believe. But caution with that one is really advised.